Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you're joining us from today. On behalf of the Foundation for IT Sustainability, we would like to welcome you to International Green IT Awareness Week for 2012. So thank you for joining us for this very special live presentation. We're really glad to have you with us today. My name is Tim Munn, a project manager with the Foundation for IT Sustainability, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of today's session and also walk through some of the housekeeping items. Then I'll turn it over to our featured presenter, John Woolston, who will introduce himself and his topic and start the presentation. As you may know, International Green IT Awareness Week was founded and is sponsored by the Foundation for IT Sustainability, which is a global non-profit organisation. Our mission is to reduce the negative impacts of technology on the environment and promote the sustainable use of technology to help solve environmental problems by educating individuals, corporations and government, promoting the implementation of green IT best practices, and encouraging the development of more sustainable technology alternatives. If you haven't heard of us before, please do visit us on the web at the address provided at the end of the presentation. So today we have John Woolston of Pinnacle joining us to present his topic entitled Green IT Cheats, 6 simple proven self-funding solutions that combined can make almost any ICT operation carbon neutral. Today John will present his material, a copy of which is available now in PDF format on this session's registration page. And then we'll take your questions. We'd ask that if you have any questions, please submit them in the question panel on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we shall answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Some of you responded to my email inquiry asking for questions in advance, and we'll try to address them in the course of the presentation or in the Q&A section at the end. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand over the presentation now to John.
Thanks for that, Tim. Just a second as I get the screen open. There we go. Again, good morning or good afternoon from wherever you are. It's talking from Australia, so for me it's morning. I'm John Woolston. I'm the Managing Director of Pinnacle. I've been in the IT industry for more years than I really like to admit. It's probably 30 years plus if I'm being honest. And I've seen a lot of changes, I've seen a lot of amazing things happen, which has given me an approach to what I'm doing today. What I want to do today is I just want to attempt to show you how easy green IT can be, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to hopefully show you some simple proven cheats, as I like to call them. These are the same sort of cheats that you can get in a video game, that if you use them you can get to your end result without having to go through a lot of effort. On the other side of the coin is I don't know exactly who I'm speaking to, so I don't know the level of your expertise or where you come from in the scheme of things. So I've deliberately designed this PowerPoint presentation and the webinar to affect the lowest common denominator. So if I am talking to something that you're fully aware of or you've already done, please bear with me and understand that it's there for that reason. Also, any statement that I make in this presentation is backed by published research. I did look at building a bibliography into it, but it started to get very cumbersome with all the references and everything across that. So any time that you want to get any information or a reference to the details that I use, please just drop me a line, and I'm quite happy to supply you with a link to the appropriate published research that backs that up. What I like to do is I like to propose a paradigm shift, if I may. A small one, it's nothing huge, but it is something that us in IT should be aware of. Quite often we don't look at the simple things because we are so used to looking forward, looking at what's coming, trying to get an idea of what we need to be across, whether it's a trend, whether it's hype, whether it has this substance, or whether it is something that we should just completely ignore and get on with our job. vendors by nature have always got to come up with the newest and the brightest and some new twist on things. So we're always looking forward. And so our focus is quite often on design and technology, design of new solutions, design of how we're going to approach things. What new technology is there? How can we can leverage that? And sometimes we forget that the approach that traditional business uses and their logic is something that we should always consider. We try to by building business cases and trying to focus on lowering other costs and improving the profit. The avenue of doing that quite often can pull us back into reality. I myself have spent many a time disappearing down a hole looking for something exciting and new when there's already a solution on the table. My whole aim is to take an operational approach to green IT. If we compare it to something which is a really simple analogy, like if we compare it to a car, and the aim of the car is to get better fuel economy. The aim of green IT is to lower our carbon footprint. There's lots of proven ways which is already in place and documented for making a car run more effective. Keeping the motor tuned, changing the air filters, oil, keeping the oil clean, making sure the tyre pressures are correct, the right type of tyres, how you drive it, as opposed to the way that we would quite often would go for it, which is try and redesign the aerodynamics of the car, which is trying to approach it from what I believe is the wrong way. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to move through these different sheets to try and show you how we can approach the carbon footprint of ICT. If we stand back and have a look at ICT in the operational sense, the carbon footprint is primarily electricity. Sure, there's water, sure, there's some other bits and pieces, but primarily it's electricity. And there's lots of studies that tell us two things. The first is that the power usage for ICT is increasing very strongly year upon year. And it depends which study you look at, whether you just do it by server density, or you do it by storage demands, or you do it by the number of PCs. An average is about 6 to 7% increase on power usage year on year. What that means is that effectively over a period of 5 years, your usage will go up by 40 to 50%. At the same time, power prices are rising around the world. Again, that varies depending on where you are in the world, but a study done in California over a period of 20 years showed that on average it was 7 years compounding, 7% per year compounding growth in real terms. In Australia, they just released a study that showed that we've ever had a 70% increase in the cost of power over the last 4 years, and this isn't going to change. A recent study in Australia said that they're expecting that to happen again in the next 4 to 5 years. When you bring these together on average across the world, you can expect your power bills to double in 5 years in real terms. That's pretty serious. And when people start looking at the carbon footprint, it's not, if they haven't done so already with your organization, it's just a matter of time before ICT becomes a focus of the decision makers on how to reduce carbon IT. They are going to come in and look at it and say, this has to change. Depending on where you are and what sort of organization you have, I've seen results of studies that some organizations, ICT, account for 50% plus of their electricity usage. So it's just a matter of time before they come in and they start saying, we need you to address this. The danger is that over 60% of IT departments don't even see the energy bill. They don't know what they're using. So you're going to be broadsided and made sure that you have to do something that you aren't even aware of. But that's okay, because there's ways that we can manage that. If you want to look down and get a picture of how the ICT carbon footprint actually is, this is a study done by the Australian Computer Society a few years ago. I've summarised it, but it basically says that PCs and monitors are around 26 to 30%, printing and imaging around 15 to 20%. And as you can see by the others there, none of this is relatively mind-blowing, if you like, but it is really good to have the perspective and put it into some numbers at the beginning. And we can address each of these areas quite easily. And by doing this, we use what I call the cheats. These are proven technologies that have already been in place for many years and that are delivering significantly lowering of carbon footprints. It's also giving you major operational advantages and lowering costs and improving business efficiency. These 6 things should happen as mainstays of any ICT operation moving forward. If you don't have, some of these would have been in place by people already. Some organisations won't have any. It's amazing how many I come across that haven't really done 4 or 5 of these 6. Some organisations have done quite a few of them and have taken it quite seriously. The first cheat is PC power management. If you like, this is the easiest one to handle. Across a lot of organisations, they don't have any formal PC power management program in place, and 20 to 30% of PCs are left on, and they can go for quite a long time, but they only being used 30% of the time in the week. So very quickly it adds up, and you end up spending money on power. There are PCs that are sitting there not doing anything, even though they're idle. Across the board, if you take whatever product or solution that you want to use for PC power management, you can get a return on investment very quickly, 6 to 12 months. There's lots of studies, and Energy Star estimates you're going to achieve 25 to 75 US dollars per PC per year in savings. There's been studies that have done, some out of the UK, that have achieved 40% power savings compared to what they were doing. An example, as you can see there, is AT&T powering down their huge fleet of PCs, save themselves well over $10 million a year. Now, of course, if your organisation doesn't have that many PCs, you're not going to save $10 million a year, but the same proportions and the same numbers work. The biggest issue that a lot of people have had with PC power management is the upfront investment of time, of developing the agents to go into this, to the SOE, to testing and managing it, making sure that it can when you make the changes to your operating environment, that you can manage it across the different operating environments and you can pull it all together. And quite often you have to get a consultant in to help you do that. That's changed. There are now agentless applications available that you can load and you can run, and you can actually try before you buy. So you go on and you use these, and you can do a test on what your current usage is, and then you can do some what-if analysis and make a decision, and from that actually build your own business case, which is very, very helpful, because then you can estimate your return on investment and you can make a decision. But as I said, it takes care of itself very, very quickly. This is an example of what the analysis you can do from just one of the agentless PC power management applications out there. This one's called PowerMinder. And you can do your current state, and then you can start playing around with what if we turn all these off. This is a very simple one. However, they can be quite dynamic. Cheat number 2. I call it new for old. We're always upgrading our technology, and upgrade time equals prime opportunity. It's a prime opportunity to change your ongoing costs. If you don't approach it that you can change your ongoing costs by changing the power that you're going to use, then you're missing a massive opportunity. Let me explain. The same performance that you get out of an piece of IT equipment does not mean the same power consumption. You should always think about what you're doing and how to change it. There's been a recent study, as I'll cover you soon, the next slide, that has done some really interesting feedback on this. And the other thing is that price also, you'd think that if you pay a higher price, you're going to get better power consumption. That also is not the case. My suggestion here for this cheat is to simply build the power usage into your purchasing criteria. Of course, if you don't get the technology payoff that you need, well, then your power consumption criteria does drop. A study which was done by an Australian federal government department just recently showed some quite amazing results. What they did is they went out and they did a random study of a large collection of different pieces of technology, primarily PCs, laptops and monitors. And they found quite an amazing result. 45% of the ones that they just picked up that were current didn't match the Energy Star specifications, which was set in 2000. And there was a 40% spread on the power usage. Now, of course, if that 40%, if you get something which uses 40% less power, then you're going to be paying 40% less in your power over the years that come. This is just an idea of the spread that you can get. It's massively varied, and a lot of people have never taken the time just to simply say, what power usage is this going to be? What am I going to be spending in idle? What am I going to be spending in use? You don't have to go through and do a massive calculation of saying that this is a percentage of time it's going to be in use compared to the percentage of time that it's not. Simply by having a look at how much power you can save by reducing your power consumption will make a big difference. Some organizations hold on to technology for 4 or 5 years. So you're basically, this decision is saying this is what I'm going to be paying in power for the next 4 or 5 years. There's a second part of cheat number 2, which I call cheat 2B. This is the other side of the coin. You're now replacing your technology, so you have to go through an ethical disposal. If you don't do this, then you are having a massive impact on the carbon footprint. Technology, by sheer nature of its manufacturing, has a huge impact on the carbon footprint of the world. 80% of the carbon footprint of a piece of technology happens during the manufacturing. A lot of people say, well, okay, so what? But if you compare that to a fridge or a car, it's 15 to 20 times more carbon per kilo is used in the manufacturing of ICT equipment than a refrigerator or a car. It contains up to 60 different elements, and 14 of those minerals are at critical levels. They're also quite toxic, so you don't wish to just dispose of them quite easily. And in Australia, we still have a large percentage of this ICT equipment going into landfill. When people realise that this is a big impact on what it can do to their organisation and how it can be seen that they aren't being corporate responsible citizens, they normally go to recycling, and that's a favoured method. Recycling is definitely better than simply just dumping it in the landfill. But the trouble is the environmental payback is not that substantial. Because it's so complicated to manufacture, it uses a lot of energy and a lot of cost to try and get those resources out. And in fact, a lot of those resources are not got out very easily out of ICT equipment. It's always better to try and move it up the waste hierarchy and move it to reuse. Now, a really interesting thing is that if you do that, what you do is that you're actually doing something which is 20 times more energy efficient. It's recognised around the world that this is the best way to approach things, and it's actually legislated in different parts of the world that it's best to try and reuse it as opposed to just dispose of it. The trick here is to actually find a professional disposal remarketing partner that can take on the responsibility of disposing of it and access the residual value of your end-of-life ICT products. But there is quite a strong market around the world for second-hand used ICT products. The reason that you've got to find a professional partner is that sadly, there's a lot of rogues in the green IT space who just want to ship it over to Ghana or to China or wherever and dispose of it and rip it to pieces and just turn it into cash. However, if you make sure that it is remarketed and reused, then you get some really interesting things. First of all, you get a high return for the product that you're selling as opposed to just selling it off for waste. And from the study that I've done with the company I work with, 90 to 95% of the time, the residual value will actually fund the disposal process, and 80 to 85% of the time, the residual value will give you a positive cash position out of doing so. So not only are you doing things better for the environment, but you're also injecting a positive cash return into your project for upgrading your technology. Cheat number 3, managed print services. For those who aren't aware of what a managed print service is, it's basically you outsource the whole print operation to an expert in running it, and you pay effectively per page like you would pay for a utility per kilowatt. Why would you do this? Well, it's a very specialized area, and it's an area which, when done correctly, can deliver phenomenal service internally, increase efficiencies, reduce people's hassle levels and problems, at the same time as slashing costs. Now, it's the old stick to your knitting principle. When you use somebody who knows what they're doing, they are very good at that and can deliver really good results. I actually know of people who contract, organizations that contract results of savings, of performance, and of reducing carbon footprints as an outsourcer. It reduces the amount of paper, it reduces the carbon footprint massively, and of course the costs are slashed. Gartner stated that this was one of the last bastions of major cost savings in the ICT structure, and they still stand by that. However, it's very important that you choose a trusted partner. Again, like Green IT, a lot of people are waving the flag, getting on the banner and saying, hey, look, we do managed print services, when all they do is just want to get control of your consumables and stick some of their printers and get new leases and things, and they aren't really that conscious about the result for you. So choosing a partner here is key. Gartner have done some really good studies on the world leaders and how they're approaching it, and there's no real surprises in that. My recommendation here is to always stay with the major people in the field. Cheat number 4, server virtualization. Server virtualization has had a lot of publicity over the last few years and has been accepted year upon year as a major trend and something that is accepted by ICT as best practice. Surprisingly, there is still a large amount of organizations that haven't moved to server virtualization. If you do the numbers, it makes sense. If you have an unvirtualized server, its utilization normally runs 15 to 20%. I heard an accountant talking the other week, and he said that no accountant in their right mind would give you permission to buy another piece of capital equipment if the one you already got has only been utilized 15 to 20%. However, in IT, by the way that we've run things, we've continually have to put on more and more hardware. As a result, the impact has been more power, more cost, more management complexities. But if you move down the path of server virtualization, you have some very amazing impacts. There's a lot of organizations that have started this path but haven't completed because of the move to move things across. You can see the sort of savings and the consolidations there that can be achieved. you have some phenomenally amazing impacts on how much you can reduce your carbon footprint. The same thing goes with your CapEx expenditure. But one of the big things is that people find that they get major improvements as the improved management and the automation they can achieve from it, and a lot of them are using that for their justification to go through the change. There's a lot of expected complexities around it, and when people are asked about why they aren't doing it, it's because they don't have the expertise, and there's a lot of perceived risks if they get it wrong. And sure, if you're moving a whole lot of your key applications and you don't know what you're doing, you could be in for an interesting exercise. The same thing comes back. The aim is to find somebody who you can trust and you've got the experience that you can bring in as a partner, that you're a professional partner to help you out with it. Cheat number 5 is the data center optimization. By nature of data centers and server rooms, they are designed at one point in time and they have a life cycle before you need to redo that. Depending on where you are in the life cycle, it can have quite an amazing impact on how you can change it. But data centers and server rooms account for around 35% of the carbon footprint, and they are a complex environment. By nature that they evolve and quite often have demands placed on their performance and their deliverables by the business that were very hard to predict, they morph, they change into a can-do, change into a beast which is very out of control and very power-hungry and unmanaged, unintentionally. IT is so busy running and delivering that they quite often, again this is a massive generalization, quite often don't have the time to go through and make sure it's all lined up. This does give you some low-hanging fruit. If you you get an expert in the field of data center management, and they come in, you've got a really good chance that you're going to get a 20 to 30% reduction in energy straight away. This can be done by all sorts of things. It can be done simply by putting panels and doors in the appropriate places within rack space. If you have a look at the data center power allocation, you can see that a good percentage of it is actually HVAC and the things that move along with that. The servers, yeah, you're already approaching that with the virtualization, but you've got the other areas where you can work on it. Now, if you don't have anyone managing or you haven't had an audit done of your data center, it's quite amazing the results that you can get. When you get a professional and they have a look at it, they do an analysis and they pick up different sorts of things that are stopping flow of air, stopping the cooling and creating hot spots that you wouldn't even be aware of. By doing that, they can make some very simple changes and you end up with an area which is working way more efficiently, and the drop in power usage for HVAC, etc., just drops massively. One of the other areas that is very simple to approach is, of course, using blanking panels in the right place and doors and things on racks and making sure that they're put into place. There's lots of other small things that they can do, but I'm trying to show you here with some graphics that you can achieve some really phenomenal results if you get an expert in to go through your data center or server room and quickly do a study. The investment required for their time pays back most of the time very quickly. The last cheat that I have is cheat number 6. The above 6 cheats, but there was 2 under cheat 2, if you like, A and B. This one is not a solution that is IT based. What it is it's actually using carbon credits. A lot of people still have issues around the concepts of carbon credits, but effectively an organisation is doing something in the world to lower the carbon footprint, and the carbon credits that they generate by a tonne can be purchased by another organisation to offset what they're doing. Why do I suggest using carbon credits? Well, what you have now done is you've gone through and you put the mainstays in place. And by putting the mainstays in place, you have now given yourself a structure to move forward. As other technologies, as other opportunities, as other business cases cross your desk, you can make a decision whether it's worthwhile or not going down the path, because you have a measure for your carbon usage. You have a price. And it's way lower than people anticipated. Also, by using the carbon credits, you can move the whole ICT operation to being carbon neutral, and you then have a measure that you can keep trying to tune what you're doing down. If you want to get an idea of how much it would cost to do that, if we use, say for example, a state-of-the-art PC, uses a very small amount of carbon per year now. Australian government's benchmark is $23 a tonne. That equates to $1.15 per year per PC, and you can have it carbon neutral. When you start looking at it like that, even if you build into a lease, it's cents per PC a month, and you can end up with a complete carbon neutral ICT operation. Again, there's a lot of people out there in this area waving flags saying, look, buy this and this is amazing, and there's also been examples around the world where the carbon credit market has been unstable, if you like. So the aim here is to find a trusted partner who can put you onto the right sort of carbon credits and the right sort of approach, so you can use those and you can retire them and lead your ICT operation to being completely carbon neutral. Let's just bring all that together. Out of the different 6 sheets, remember the original screen that we had of the ACS figures, where we had 26% of the power usage being PCs and monitors, 16 being printers, 15 being servers, etc. If we take the energy reductions that are documented from the 6 sheets that I proposed above, then we can see that we're talking about, for PCs and monitors, we're talking about 40% reduction for PC power management, 50% reduction for moving from old technology to new technology. If we're talking about printers, we're talking about a carbon reduction of 50% quite happily a lot of the time when you do move from old printing technology to new. For servers, server virtualization can reduce your carbon footprint by 80%. The data centers, the low-hanging fruit, this is before you get into any of the best practices or you get into any of the more sophisticated designs. You're talking 20 to 30% reduction. If you apply that to the figures on the left and reduce them by roughly doing that, and I've only used 50% for the PCs and monitors because there's a couple of equations in there. That means the 26% goes down to 13, the 16 goes down to 8, the 15 goes down to 3, the 27 goes down to 19. But if you then do a comparative result against the 100%, you've now got 60. So that means that you can get an energy reduction of around 40% by doing these cheats. If you've already done some, of course, like if you've already outsourced your management service, well then you're not going to gain as much from that. But if we say, well then okay, we're not going to get those reductions, and you even bring each of those down to half or 30% of what they can achieve, you're still looking at roughly a 20% reduction in your carbon footprint before you even do anything else. But the really amazing thing about these cheats is that you don't do them from a business point of view just to deliver green IT. What you do is you deliver them to follow the money. each of these cheats has an ability to put money into the pocket of the organisation. PC power management, a return on investments of 6 to 12 months, savings of up to 40% on an ongoing basis. New for old. Based on studies, you can have a phenomenal impact here. You can reduce your power usage on the PCs or on other technology by 75%. And on top of that, by using a certified remarketer, you get access to your residual value. Management services, you are going to, on average, according to Gartner, you will save 25%. Some people save 30, 35%. On average, you're saving 25% in your costs on average. The server virtualization, very common to get 50% savings. And that's just with your CapEx and with your efficiency savings. 50% savings is easily achievable. Your data center optimization, the low-hanging fruit. Before you do any of the longer, more intense redesigns, before you start moving down the path of the best practices that take a lot more effort or take a lot more energy, just making the simple changes of making hot, cold aisles, of doing all those sorts of things that a consultant can show you, you can get 20 to 30% savings, and that's ongoing. The carbon credits, well, they're easily funded from any of the above savings. As you can see, they're typically way less than anybody anticipates. So where does that leave me? Well, Pinnacle IGO is the aim of Pinnacle IGO is to provide access to organisations to the knowledge of how to do this, resources, so you can pick it up yourself and do it, or execute it on your behalf. In other words, we have a consulting arm which consultants will come in, experts in their different fields, and help you to have a view of where you're at and what should happen. We have a huge amount of resources that we post on our website. That includes libraries, includes plans, includes calculators, includes articles, all sorts of things to help anybody who wants to move down the path around these 6 cheats to do so on their own benefit. Or we can do the execution. We can take care of the setting up a management service. We can take care of putting together the server virtualization. We can take care of the carbon credits if that's what you want, or any combination thereof. But the main thing is that I wanted to point out was our resources. The resources are there for anybody to use. But one of the really good ones is a detailed action plan that has been gathered over the years from different publications and from different people, and is a step-by-step plan to go through as a tick box that you can say, have I done this, can I do that, to go through those 6 mainstays and build a carbon neutral ICT environment. That's free for download. If you go to the resources and look up a detailed action plan, it's there. We also have a library that enables people to see books and various other things that they can access that could be of use to them. This is continually growing. We even have a forum where people can jump in and have discussions and raise questions around the best way to use these mainstays approaches to changing the whole ICT carbon footprint. We also believe that certification, once you've done this, is a good thing to have. Well, first of all, it enables ICT to stand up and say, we are leading, we can help. But more importantly, it enables an organisation to stand up and wave the flag and brag, saying that we've done what we should do and we are handling our corporate social responsibility correctly. It's time to brag. Now, I'm quite happy to answer any questions now. I've sort of gone through the presentation a lot faster than I had anticipated, but that's okay. It means that people don't have to hang around longer than they need to. But I now sort of pass it back to Tim and Diane to see if there have been any questions that have been raised while I've been rabbiting onto a computer screen.
Well, great. Thank you again very much, John, for that very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. As you mentioned, we'll kick off now with the Q&A portion of our live speaker session. So audience, if you have any questions that you would like to ask John about his presentation, his work at Pinnacle iGo, or his experiences in green IT and sustainable IT, then please submit your questions now in the questions and chat box in the webinar control panel. John will be able to address each question in turn, and please remember, if you would like to speak with John or a representative of the Foundation for IT Sustainability, please feel free to email info@pits.org at any time following this session, and we will be happy to assist your query following the conclusion of today's session. So now for the user-submitted questions. So the first one we have for you, John, is any of the cheats more effective than another, and should you start with one over another?
Okay. The effectiveness depends on whether you're looking for making a difference to the carbon footprint in the world and the environment, or whether you're looking to make a commercial difference. If you're looking to make a commercial difference, well then my suggestion would be to try and move through the cheats in order. The reason that I put them in that order is because the simplest is the first, and you can take care of that. However, if you're interested in making your biggest impact on the environment, then cheat 2B is the one to look at, where you should be making sure that every single piece of your end-of-life ICT product is going through a certified remarketer who is going to take care of it and remarket it, not just have it stripped down or dump it into a landfill. And the impact of, sadly, that the impact of end-of-life ICT equipment that is dumped, and I know there's lots of parts of the world where it's actually illegal to put into tips, into dumps, landfills. In Australia it's not, and sadly it's something that has never been addressed. So in Australia particularly is to actually do that first. Apart from that, would then be the quickest and the easiest way to make a difference would be to go into the PC power management and then work on through that. As each step comes along, it requires more investment of time and effort from an organisation. So that's and hence why the cheats have been put in that order.
Great, thank you for that, John. Next question is, it all does sound quite easy and quite simple. Is there any common traps or issues that users should be aware of?
Yeah, fast-talking salespeople. They come in, they want to sell their product, they want to push what they do, they want to make their commission. And as a result, a lot of people will get out there greenwash, and they will try and wash what they do as green. They will try and tell you that they can help you out with the different areas. So the biggest pitfall, particularly as you move down the cheats, is making sure that you align with a professional partner that you can trust. And it's more important to take time to choose a partner who's going to be able to fit your needs and deliver against what you need to do, as opposed to just grabbing somebody who says they can do server virtualization, or grab somebody who says they've got a management service. Because as PCs are not generate made equal, nor are the solutions and the expertise that you can get. So my recommendation is to take time to choose who you're going to get into bed with long term.
Thank you, John. So what if an organisation has already implemented the cheats that you've mentioned in today's presentation? What else can they look at doing?
Well, there's always lots of other things that are coming around. There's that people are always developing new ways of saving power. There's always developing new ways of making a data centre more efficient. There's always people who are always trying to come up with new ideas, and sure, go down that path. But my recommendation is, if you've installed the 6 cheats, the 6 mainstays, then get certification. Go to somebody like FITS and get some certification so you can stand up and wave the flag. The reason I say that is because that will expand what you're doing out into the organisation. It will expand out into the stakeholders, and they will feel good, they will get behind it. And then quite often is that they come back to ICT to lead them, because ICT have their fingers in every part of an organisation and have an understanding of what happens within the organisation. When they see that ICT have executed against the carbon footprint, they will then come to ICT saying, how can you help? That means that ICT then become involved in doing projects that will help the organisation improve its efficiency even more, at the same time as bringing down the carbon footprint of the rest of the organisation. And it expands the considered importance, if you like, of the ICT operation.
Great, thanks, John. We've actually got a question from another question from our audience members.
Yep.
This one is saying, thanks for the presentation. How can I best present the green IT case to my management team to increase buy-in?
My recommendation would be to take each of the cheats. If you want to do it yourself, there is lots of resources, as I said, on the PIGO website, Pinnacle IGO website, and each of those can show you how you can generate a business case. Each of those cheats stand on their own as a business case, and there are lots of studies, there's lots of reasons. There's this, if you take, for example, a management service. Management service, if you go to one of the leaders like HP or Xerox or Canon, they have models that they can plug in that will go through and will give you a very, very exact business case result that you can then take to your manager. If you are doing server virtualization, you can go to the VMware, and VMware have these very sophisticated tools that enable you to build all the costs of the change, including the consulting, including the software, and the impact it's going to have on your servers. If you go to any of the PC power management organizations, they again have these tools that you can use to build your business case. Even if you, with the exception of cheat number 6, there are models that are built for every single one of those areas that are readily available. And if you have a trusted partner, then they can give you access to those models, and they can give you the tools that you can then have a business case that you can take to your management. And it stands. Every single one of those stand on their own, and it's been proven by many years of study by people like Gartner, Forrester, etc., etc. The number of resources that you have to draw on are quite phenomenal. And your work that you need to do yourself to get a business case and get it through moves very quickly. I hope that helps.
Thank you, John. I have another couple of questions for you, actually. So the detailed action plan you refer to in your presentation, can you possibly elaborate on what that covers exactly?
Sure. What it does is it takes basically each of the cheats and it turns it into a little step-by-step approach. For example, if you have a look at the PC power management, what it does is it not only puts in PC power management applications, it also puts signs up saying turn your PC off. It also goes through, it has a look at the benefits of plugging into it, specialized power boards that have a plug for USB and for other peripherals, that when your PC is powered down, it will turn off the other peripherals as well. It goes through how to approach the management service. In other words, it says, okay, I want a management service. What sort of questions should I be asking of the provider? And it breaks it down into detail. It's basically a 5 or 6 page checklist of things that have been done by different people to enable them to move down through these cheats. Some of them are very simple, like I said, like putting up a sign or doing an internal communication program around telling people to turn their PC off when they walk away. There is products that you can plug to the PC that if you hit like a button, it will put the PC automatically into hibernation. And when you come back, you can hit it again. It gives you these sorts of suggestions, practical suggestions that you can use or decide to use or not to use. It depends on where an organisation is. As I said, if an organisation has already committed to a managed print service or to server virtualization, for example, the decisions around how they want to move through based on the detailed action plan, of course, have to change. If an organisation has just in the last 18 months built a brand new data centre, well, obviously some of the details around that detailed action plan wouldn't be valid. But it assumes that you have done zero, and it gives you a whole lot of tick boxes that you can go through and mark off as whether you feel it's valid for you to do or not.
Great, thanks so much, John. Just another question someone has submitted here. When you look at the cheats, they all seem to make sense for larger organisations. Are they equally valid for smaller organisations as well?
Yes, they are. Maybe nowhere near as dramatic as a result. I mean, if you haven't got 300,000 PCs, you're not going to get a $10 million savings in your power bill by putting into PC power management. But the principles still exist. If we take PC power management, for example, PowerMinder, which is one of the applications that I'm aware of, gives away licenses for free up to 50 PCs. So if your organisation is very small and it's less than 50 PCs, then you can load that yourself, run it, manage it, and it doesn't cost you a cent. If you move above that, then you're looking at an investment of per PC of like $10 to $15 a PC. So if you've got a fleet of 100 PCs, you're only looking at an investment of $1,000 to $1,500 that will give you this application, and you'll save your power very, very quickly, and you actually have that impact. The same returns on investment apply no matter what size the organisation. But yeah, definitely, if your organisation is on the larger end, you can make some really dramatic numbers and make case studies and everything like that. But just because your organisation is smaller doesn't mean none of these cheats wouldn't work for you.
Thanks, John. We have another question from one of our audience members. Can you recommend any carbon or energy monitoring software packages that may be useful for a small organisation with less than 50 staff?
Off the top of my head, no, I can't. There are the majority of packages that I've seen are designed for large organisations and require an investment at the front end, which is quite large. However, it depends on what you need to monitor and how you're going to monitor it. You can do a lot of your monitoring by simple mathematics. It depends on your accuracy. I've seen some people who don't have any software monitoring applications, some carbon footprint monitoring applications, to use the standard measures that are available from the research for implied percentages, and have built for themselves spreadsheets that can be quite effective in them making a measurement. The measurement is probably only going to be within 5 or 10%, but it is better than having no measurement. The aim of measurement, of course, is to make a comparison to what you're doing to where you're going. Just measuring something and saying I have 1,000 of these is of no use unless you are going to try and increase it or decrease it. If I can put the person asking the question onto one of my counterparts who have come up with this sort of approach, and it's just basically using some smarts and building your own logic around it. It's all very standard. You don't need to I don't believe that you need to measure your carbon footprint before you make any changes. For example, if you take the PC power management approach, you don't need to go around and measure the power that's being used by every single PC before you make a decision to turn them off overnight. By using a quick analytical tool, you can capture how much power is, how many hours they're on, and then you know by turning them off you're going to get a decrease. You can then simply compare your power usage over the last couple of years for that period to your new power usage, and you can have a relatively good point of how much power you've saved. Again, within 5–10%. It depends on the accuracy that you're looking for. I hope that helps, but typically you need to be a large organisation to justify the investment not only of the software that you need to do the detailed carbon monitoring, but also the ongoing staff to sit and manage it and use it.
Thanks, John. I have a question here from one of our members relating to the ethical disposal you were discussing previously in your presentation. The question is, how organisations should go about approaching suppliers to work with them in regards to ethical procurement and disposal of ICT infrastructure.
Okay. You've got the two different sides of the coin. When you're going to them from the procurement side of things, it's completely different to going to the disposal side of things. If you use a vendor to take care of your disposal, they again typically outsource that. They typically go to somebody else to do that because they're not experts at disposal. They manufacture technology and they make their living out of providing it. The forces around the world via legislation and via peer pressure is forcing them to look at their disposal, and in a lot of the procurement things people are asking for them to guarantee the disposal. On the purchasing side of things, more and more tenders are coming out stating that not only do vendors have to supply a stewardship of how they have got to where they're going with their certifications around ISO or around their agreements with their suppliers to make sure that they've got the right supply chain. But they also provide the technology as part of an ongoing purchasing program for testing. It's a very easy time then for you to use some meters and things to do your real life testing. Sadly, it is difficult to get detailed and accurate information from the way vendors provide it on their websites and on their specifications about how much power usage they have. But you can do the calculations back based on wattage and based on some of the simple figures for yourself to see the difference in power usage. So it's quite easy to build it into your procurement side of things, where you ask for them to provide evidence that they are taking it seriously. And organisations who are taking it seriously will make sure they've gone to the international approved standards like ISO 14001, and they're using internal processes around like other ISO processes to justify and to back up their statements. On the disposal side of things, it quite often makes sense for you to go directly to a certified disposal expert, outsourcer, remarketer, because that way you get access to your residual value yourself. If you go via a vendor, they have to cover that cost, and they quite often cover that cost by getting access to part of, if not all of, the residual value. I know of resellers who take IT resellers who take back the gear and they say they will dispose of it and then they sell it and they take the profit for themselves. I personally don't think that's ethical, but it's their choice. And again, it's your choice. If you talk to organisations and they make statements that they can do this, you make sure that they've got the appropriate ISO certifications. You find good references from the industry that you're working within. They've either been recognised by the industry or they haven't. They have got names on their books of substantial customers. But on top of that, they can provide you with a stewardship and complete transparency of what's going on with the equipment. In other words, you can go in, for example, online. Some of them have these things online, where you go in and you can check out what's happened to a piece of equipment, and you know that on the 14th of August it was sold to this particular company for $74, and you can check that out at any time. So you know what's going on, so you have complete visibility without having to do the effort. So that's how I would build it into the two different sides of things. If you want to use a vendor and you want to use your own partner to dispose of it, then you need to understand who they are using and how they're disposing of it, and whether they themselves are getting residual value out of the product that you should be having used to be applied against your purchases. I hope that helps.
Thank you, John. I have one last question here, which is turning off PCs is okay for cost saving, but how will organisations know when they've achieved their green IT goal?
Well, first off, it depends on the goal that's been set. It depends. A lot of organisations that I've come across attempt to set a goal which is extremely difficult to measure. If your goal is hard to measure, then it's hard to achieve. So then you have to, it goes back to one of the previous questions about how can you measure your carbon footprint. So I can sit back and say I can achieve 30% reduction in my carbon footprint as a measurable goal. My approach is the other side of that coin, and my approach is that to start with, you need to put your mainstays in place. You need to put the basics in place, just like the car. You need to make sure that the car's tuned. You need to make sure that the tyres are okay. You need to make sure that the oil gets changed a lot. You need to make sure the tyre pressures are correct. Right? And then once you've done that, then you can move on to saying, right, what we want to do now is we want to teach our drivers to drive gently and not accelerate hard. We want to look, when we go out and purchase new cars, we want to make sure that the cars are more effective fuel-wise. If you could have a measure of the impact that your changes on Green IT has on the organisation by using it on the comparison of the changes in the power usage. It's relatively easy using, I've been told by many, electrical engineer, that to set up systems to be able to keep track of the power that is used by ICT. Some of it is very simple, some of it requires setting up virtual meters and various other things like that, but you can do it quite easily. So my recommendation is to, when you've done it by the measurements you're getting from your power reduction, if you've set that as a goal originally. If you haven't set that as a goal, then my suggestion is to set some other goals, being to have in place the 6 mainstays, the 6 cheats of Green IT. And when you have those, you then go to an organisation like FITS, which has a certification program that you go through, and you measure yourself against that certification and measure yourself against what they can do, and then you can say, this is how good I am, and you then have some other measures of activities and savings and approaches that you can do as well. It really does depend on how you set your goal. Sadly, those of us in IT are normally quite analytical, so we like to have very hard numbers. So we like to say, I am going to reduce our carbon footprint by 25% by 2015. sounds good, but it then implies measurement. I am now leaning to the fact of saying that what we're going to do is we want to get certification, for example, from FITS for our green fleet or our green data center by 2013. Now for me that's a lot easier to achieve, and it is something that you can hold up with, but it doesn't fit into our mindset of I wanting to reduce the measure by a certain number. I hope that's helped. I come back to my point saying that it depends how you set your goal, it depends on how you meet it.
Okay, thank you, John. Just a notice to the audience members, please submit any remaining questions you have now, as the session will be closing shortly. We'll just wait a moment for any last-minute questions. Okay, John, we have one last question that's just come through. Okay, if you would have to recommend just one sheet to embed within an organization, what would you recommend starting with?
It depends if I put my greenie hat on or put my business hat on. If I put my greenie hat on, it's the disposal of the PCs and the end of ICT product. That's the one that makes the biggest impact on the environment. If I put my commercial hat on, then it would be PC power management. That's the quickest and the most effective ways. So it depends on whether I'm talking as a businessman or whether I'm talking as someone who believes in making a difference to the planet. I hope that helps.
Thank you, John. Okay, well, I think that's all of the questions that's been received for today. So that will end our webinar session for today. So thank you very much, John, for your time and your willingness to share your information and experiences. Also, thank you to all who've participated in today's session. We're really glad you could all join us and hope the session was helpful for you. Just a reminder that a recording of this session will be made available within 24 hours via the Green IT Week virtual conference webinar page. So you can look forward to reviewing this session at a later time if you certainly wish. Did you have any closing remarks or comments, John?
Thank you for giving me your time. It's always good to think that you're making a difference somewhere. And please feel free to use the website. It's there as primarily as a resource, and if you go there you'll see that. I know that the services that I provide are normally quite local, being in Australia, but if there's any other resources from anywhere else that you can use, please use it, and I'm happy to get into conversations with anybody to help them achieve their goal, whatever it might be. Thank you.
Thank you again, John. Thank you very much. So that concludes our session for today. We look forward to seeing you at the other live webinar sessions we have upcoming throughout International Green IT Awareness Week. Today is the first day of 7, so there's plenty of more action coming up, so keep an eye on the virtual conference website and feel free to register for as many presentations as you would like. Certainly, if you have any questions for John following the session, please feel free to email us at info@fits.org or directly to John himself, and we'll certainly be happy to pass along any questions or feedback you may have from today's session. So thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of your day.